All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention. I'm liking what you're dishing out there. I'm liking what you. I want to learn a little bit more about these 5 SEAL secrets. What are the 5 SEALs, or did you? I know you basically covered them all.
So basically, so get naked. So get is taking action, and naked is those 5 SEAL secrets. The N is for never quit, and so. That's an easy thing to say, but it's not that easy to do, especially if you have a challenge that's like, that seems unattainable. Becoming a UFC champion, becoming a Navy SEAL, starting a company.
I was whatever, because a lot of people, okay, you keep putting up as a challenge, but to me, like going a challenge, or use the word setting goals for yourself. Because a lot of young people, they don't know what they're going to do in life,
right?
And they don't even understand the concept of setting a goal. What they do is it's more like wishful thinking. I think I'd like to do this, but then they don't put any kind of steps in place to start to achieve anything towards that direction. And I've got a billionaire friend that I show up to every now and then he's always surprised when I start to walk out the door. He goes, Dan, Severn. He goes, do I see you retreating? I go, I says, I'm not retreating. I said, I'm simply reloading my ammunition to come back fighting again.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's part of it. Like, if you want to be successful, you got to have some kind of plan, and you can't have like the good idea fairy. I got lots of good ideas, but in order for me to actually be successful and like accomplish something, I got to have a plan. Like that, I'll adjust that plan along the way because I don't know everything, and as I go and I fail and I learn and I succeed and I fail again, like I'll make those adjustments as necessary. But I have a plan, and I also like chop the plan up into attainable pieces. So, I want to, if I want to make a multi-million-dollar company, I got to have a plan, and I'm not going to do it overnight. I got to have like, I need to make $1,000 first, and then maybe 10,000, and then 100, and then, grow from there. Like what's attainable? It's $1 million, multi-million-dollar. Is that attainable? Well, it is, but it's a long way off.
It's not tomorrow.
It's not tomorrow. And so what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? I need to make $1 first, and then 10, and then grow it from there.
And then in 6 months, I'll make $10,000.
Exactly.
And then in 7 months, we'll add another.
And then grow. And so that, starting a company, that's a thing, but it can be, even like getting a degree, doing, any kind of vocational work. If you want to be a missionary, it doesn't matter. Like there's no shortcuts. It's not this world, this life isn't about instant gratification. It's not about just being easy and entitled. It's about making a plan. And if you want to do something and you want to achieve fucking greatness in your life, then you got to do work. So, but before you can and I'm just going to keep coming back to you guys, before you can step into the octagon, you got to fucking train. You got to learn how to wrestle. You got to learn how to do jiu-jitsu. You got to learn how to box. You got to learn how to kick and punch and take a punch. Yeah. And you got to learn all this stuff. And you don't learn it like the day that you show up to the ring. You learned it all along the way. Like you did some wrestling tournaments. You maybe from high school to college to whatever, or karate or whatever it is. Like those were steps. Those were attainable steps that you were able to do in order to. And you didn't quit along the way. You kept going until you finished that process, and then you go on to the next process. And so, in SEAL training, we have, we've got Hell Week, and Hell Week is 5.5 days of you don't sleep, you're cold and you're wet and you're miserable the whole time, and the instructors are yelling at you the whole time. You have this boat on your head, and but they do give you a break during Hell Week. You eat 4 times a day. And all you got to do, if you're getting a little mentally fatigued, I don't know how much more of this I can do, all you got to do is make it to the next meal. Right. Or just make it to the end. They can only keep you in the water, jackhammering, shivering uncontrollably for such a long time. They can only keep you there for so long. All you got to do is wait till suck it up and man up and just get to the end of that evolution. They're going to get you out, and then they're going to put the boat on your head, and you're going to start running and doing races, and you're going to warm up just fine. And then you're going to be tired of doing that, and you're like, can I get back in the ocean and cool back down? So all you got to do is take these unattainable goals in your life, whatever they are, chop them up into, bite-sized pieces, and then you take those pieces and you just stack wins, win on top of win on top of win, and just don't quit. Just finish that one thing. Maybe you take a break after you finish that one thing. Okay, then you start over the next day and continue on. And that's what Never Quit is all about.
So how was Hell Week for you?
I liked Hell Week. Yeah. I had a good time in Hell Week. It sucks. It's miserable. One of the lessons that I learned during Hell Week is, so just to kind of give you a story, you're broken up into boat crews. Boat crews are 7 guys on a boat, and you're attached to that boat the whole time. So I got a couple stories about Hell Week. Number one was Hell Week kicks off Sunday night, and they have these tents set up on the beach. You go to the tent, you lay on your cot, and they tell you don't fall asleep. Well, for us, the night before in the barracks, the fire alarm kept going off for many hours, so we didn't get much sleep that night. And so they took, all right, go out. It's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. Go get in your tent and don't fall asleep. And then once nightfall comes, then they're going to come and get you and start breakout and all this other stuff. Well, I was tired. I mean, I'm anticipating, Hell Week kicking off, but I'm tired. I didn't sleep much the night before. So I'm like laying there.
Were these alarms going off deliberately to keep
That's a fine question. I don't know. I don't know. But the fire department showed up like every single time. But they took their sweet time getting there, like an hour later, and then we go back and maybe sleep for a little bit longer, and then the fire alarm went off again. So I was like laying out in the parking lot outside the barracks, like kind of like snoozing in the parking lot on the ground. Okay, you can go back inside. And then that went on for like 4 or 5 times Saturday night into Sunday. And then Sunday you just kind of prep and get ready to go. You watch some movies, and the movie that we watched was Major Payne. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Yeah. And so that the humor from that movie just like motivated so many people throughout Hell Week. Like, you're cold and miserable or whatever, and someone will do like the Damon Wayans, whatever his name is.
I'll take your mind off that. Let me see your finger.
Your mind off that
Let me see your finger. Or yeah. Let me see your finger. Yeah.
Yeah. So those times of absolute misery during Hell Week, someone would like crack off a joke from that movie, and like everyone just starts laughing. Like you went from like completely miserable to laughing. But
it's hysterical laughter because you're fucking
and you're
mind.
Like for sure you're a little fucked up. Yeah. And then so I fell asleep, of course, because I can't sleep anymore. But back then I could fall asleep at the drop of a hat. And so Hell Week kicks off. It's breakout. There's like machine guns. They're blanks. There's explosions going off. You get up. You run out. It's just complete chaos, and what they're trying to stimulate is combat, the chaos of combat. And they're like telling you to do this, and you go in that way, and they're just like challenging you, and you're like running around, and you're kind of in this zone of like, figure it out and get shit done and do what you're told to do, and more explosions, and like, okay, you go get wet, and then you have to grab your swim buddy, and then go tell your boat crew leader, hey, we're gonna go get wet, because if they're gonna call for a muster when you're not there. And if you lose people while you're in combat or whatever, then you get punished for that. It doesn't matter. You're going to get punished anyway. But it's just part of the game. And then someone that had already been through Hell Week told me, like, when you're going through breakout, what I want you to do is I want you to just, like, step to the side of the grinder there at the Bud's compound. Just step to the side, pull yourself out of Hell Week. Now, you're not quitting. You're just, like, stopping, and you're detaching yourself from the situation, and you look around. Like, see actually what's going on there. And so, about 30 minutes in, I'm like, okay, I think this is a fine time to like do that. And so I stepped off went out and got wet and sandy and came back with my swim buddy. And rather than like just starting to like do, more 8-count bodybuilders or crawl around the ground, I just kind of like stepped to the side where I was maybe not quite noticed as much. And I just looked around, and there were, like, it's a 2-story, like the building is 2 stories. It kind of wraps around this grinder where you do all your PTs and kind of ceremonies and stuff. And I looked around, and there was the balconies were full of people. I had no idea that all these people were there. I looked this way, they're full of people. And then I'm like looking at sort of what's going on in the background with like how the instructors are what they're doing and kind of the other stuff. And I was like, oh, I got it. It's not so chaotic. So I just like detached myself from the situation just for a little bit. I took it all in. I'm like, okay, I see what's going on now. and I went back to being in the bubble of like, completely immersing myself in Hell Week. So that was kind of a cool lesson that I learned. But another lesson that I learned in Hell Week is there was one boat crew that was winning all the races. I also knew that I didn't want to be surrounded by people who didn't want to be there. Like Buds for me, it's 6 months long, but it took me a short 13 months to get through training because, I like a little extra pain, apparently. I got injured a few times. And now I'm making it through Hell Week. I've been at Buds for like 6 months, just like spinning my wheels. And now I'm surrounded, like there are guys in my boat crew that they want to quit. And I'm like, get out. But other guys are like, no, stay. I'm like, no, let him go away. And so.
Why?
Because they don't want to be there. They want to quit.
No, I know that.
I don't want to be a quitter. Yeah. I don't want to be.
So you don't want him like he's contagious. You don't want
he could be contagious for other guys. Let
Yeah.
them make their own decision.
Right.
And and that is contagious. And
the bad apple will sparrow whole.
And I saw this in some other evolutions where like as soon as one guy quits, other guys start to quit. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, it's okay to quit. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Why did you even show up if you're going to quit? Like, what was the point here?
So early in here, right?
Yeah, I saw guys quit. When you check into Buds, there's this misconception that everything is for uniforms are free and things like that. They give you uniforms, but you have to pay money to get your name tapes sewn on. You got to do the work to like stencil your name on there. You got to like start your uniform. It actually costs quite a bit of money, and like guys were quitting the very first day before we did anything hard.
Shit.
And I'm like, why did you even show up? What is going on here? And I'm looking at these people and thinking that they're like amazing athletes, and many of them were. Like we had amazing athletes quit because the water was too cold, or they didn't want to carry that boat on their head, or I didn't want to run anymore, or whatever it was. And so it's very cool in Buds. You learn like what people have in their heart, like their soul, like what drives them. Like even though you're an amazing athlete, that does not mean that you're going to be a good Navy SEAL.
Right.
And quite honestly, I've done things in combat that were so much harder than SEAL training. Like people say, oh, that's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not. It's only a selection process to see if you have what it takes to do hard stuff, because life is going to give you hard stuff, and you have the mental fortitude to like just press through it and keep going and do the things that are required of you in order to either live or thrive, however that works out.
Right.
I'm sure I have like 50 more stories about Hell Week that I could probably tell.
But I mean, that you're just describing right now, there, Will. I mean, actually pertains just to everyday life. I mean, people got to do the exact same thing in everyday life. I mean, you got to wake up in the morning, you got to get your ass out of bed, you got to go to work, you got to, you got to make things happen.
Yeah.
If you don't like your job, well, you got to be looking for something better while you keep the first job. And
yeah, exactly.
But again, as I said before, it's what you endured there for military wise was one aspect of, but if you want to look at it from everyday life perspective, people got to get up in the morning. Everyone's got 24 hours in a day. How are you
going to use those 24 hours?
How are you squandering your day? I mean,
right.
A lot of people do squander their day, spending too much time gaming on the laptops and that. But I mean, it's a great tool. The cell phone's a great tool. The laptop's a great tool if you use it as such. But at the same token, they're some of the biggest distractions. I mean, you watch people all the time. They got funny clips of that you can watch on YouTube as people are texting as they're walking down the road and they walk into a wall or walk into a post or something like that,
right.
because they're just so mesmerized by this little electronic device here. But the same things pertain to everyday people about setting goals themselves and getting things done. I don't care if you're we had the big COVID crisis that was taking place. People were locked down. They can't work out, stuff like that. But I would say, what did that floor cost you? That floor cost you nothing. Still doing body weight exercise are some of the best exercise you can do. You still do jumping jacks and push-ups and sit-ups and squats.
Jump rope, whatever you want. Yeah. Go for a run.
So,
well, let's get back to the Buds training, because our first guest was Ray Cashcare.
Ray Cashcare.
Yep, he said,
former Navy SEAL.
He said he carried you through buds. That you were just a burden to him.
Ray wasn't tall enough to be in my boat crew.
He probably wasn't tall enough to be in anybody's boat crew.
Yeah, Ray went through buds before I did. So, but Ray was like my mentor when I got to my first SEAL team. He'd already been at the team for a couple years, and so when I came in as a new guy, I didn't know anything, and so Ray kind of helped show me the ropes, and yeah. I've got a few Ray stories that I will not share on the air.
Well, good. I'm sorry to cancel this shit. What was the hardest thing about combat for you?
Losing people. Like no one. Like your buddy's right there today.
Right.
He was right there 5 minutes ago,
right.
And now he's not there anymore. That was the hardest. Like it's like, and then the aftermath of that, like you're still depending on that person. You still see that person. I still see like people that I've lost. Like I see like people that look like them, and I'm like, oh wait, he's been dead for like 10 years. So that's the hardest part. I mean, being in combat, I enjoy being in combat, but losing friends, that sucks.
That's a big, heavy guilt trip.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the hardest, is the guilt.
Yeah. I mean, some of it, there's this thing called survivor's remorse.
Right.
I think that's what it's called. So we've had some of that. On one of my deployments, I was in Iraq doing security work for, so our mission was a miserable mission, but it was a no-fail mission, and our job was to keep the interim Iraqi government alive. We provided security for them, and that was like because the SEAL team, like there's all this sort of inner service animosity, like no Green Berets are better, no Navy SEALs are better, no Marines are better, no Army rank, like everyone's like we're all who's better, but because this was a no-fail mission. Like, we can't afford politically and strategically to have one of these guys killed. They pulled us off of, hunting down bad guys to keep these guys alive. Yeah. And so on one of those, and we also were doing work in Afghanistan. And so I was at SEAL Team 10. I was a platoon chief in 2005, and we deployed. So my platoon deployed to Iraq to do that security mission. And I was going somewhere with this. I have no idea where I was going, but I'm just going to tell a story anyway. It was about losing guys. So I was in Iraq, and we're doing the work. And before we went, I was pretty pissed off that we got this mission. My platoon got stuck with this, and I kind of bitched at my commanding officer. And I was like, "Sir, you know that our platoon is better than those platoons." He's like, "You're right. You are. Not all SEAL platoons are created equal." And I'm not saying that we were always the best, but that particular platoon that I was a part of, I would put them against anyone. Mm-hmm. Most of them went over to development group. Most of the guys went over to development group and thrived over there. But while we were in Iraq, the other platoon was in Afghanistan. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Operation Red Wings, where what's the guy's name? Marcus Luttrell, was the lone survivor. Right. So he was from the team that I retired from, but that was our sister SEAL platoon went over to do that mission, and to hunt bad guys in Afghanistan. And I was emailing those guys the day before they got shot down, and so we lost. That was the biggest loss of SEALs up until about 10 years ago, when another helicopter full of SEALs got shot down. But that was the biggest loss of SEALs since Vietnam. And they were like people I was just talking to. And that was tough. And then we've had guys that didn't get on the helicopter that, they eventually were kicked out of the Navy because they had so much like weird survivor's remorse that like their brains were all screwed up. Yeah. And it's carried on with them. So I think losing people is really the hardest part, but that's combat also. Yeah. That's just part of it.
Who okayed that mission for that helicopter to go in that position?
So there were a lot of lessons learned from that. it was, so that was a quick reaction force. So so there were 4 guys on the ground doing reconnaissance of a bad guy, like his compound. They were up on the mountain observing a compound down over there somewhere. And you can't really hide in Afghanistan. Like those guys are like walking all through the mountains. Like they know like if a bush is out of place, they know it. And so there was a shepherd like kind of cruising through and like walked right up on the guys. And so they like wrapped him up and they tied him up and they eventually let him go. And the thought is that he left and he went and told the local warlord or whatever, Taliban, hey, there's a bunch of Americans up there and this is where they are. And so the Taliban came up and they took the high ground and they started engaging the SEALs that were on the ground. And then those guys fought their way back. We lost 3 in that gunfight. And then Marcus Luttrell, he sort of got blown off the side of the hill. But Murph, who eventually got the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously, Michael Murphy, he got up on a rock, and he was shot, and then he got up on the rock and he got on a cell phone because they couldn't make radio comms because there was a mountain in the way of the satellite, and he got up tall enough in order to call back to the headquarters that was a couple hundred miles away, and said, "Hey, we're under heavy gunfire. We need a quick reaction force." And so he called directly back to the platoon, the task unit, and they ran out and they coordinated and they jumped on helicopters and flew out. And then it was broad daylight. The organization that the Army helicopters that we were working with, they generally don't work in the daylight, and the MH-47s, the double bladed helicopters, they can go a lot faster than a single bladed helicopter. And so they were in a hot hurry to hurry up and get there, and they didn't wait for their kind of support gunships to get there and kind of clear the area and secure the landing zone. And so they rolled in, and one of the guys on the ground with an RPG had a direct hit and like knocked the helicopter out of the sky. The other helicopter, they were shot at, but they missed. I had buddies on one of the guys on the other helicopter, he's been in like 5 or 6 helicopter crashes. And I was like, for sure Pete was on that helicopter. And he was like, dude, I saw the RPGs cruise past our helicopter. And, we were lucky, they missed us and they flew away. But, I'm in Iraq. I can't do anything about, my brothers, getting killed over here. And I'm busy babysitting, these
politicians.
Yeah, exactly.
Or bureaucrats. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, I'm gonna say when you were saying the words RPG, a lot of the people aren't gonna understand RPG just to let them know it's a rocket propelled grenade. Correct?
Exactly. It's funny. Like I was in the SEAL teams for a few years before I even knew that acronym. Funny enough.
Yeah. Well, I was actually in Afghanistan and went on a USO tour to half a dozen of different FOBs. So that was really interesting to be there. And then probably the most solemn occasion was they let the different people know that it was either around 5 a.m. in the morning that they were going to be bringing some of the soldiers' bodies.
Yep. And
that if you wanted to step out onto the asphalt, this is how you do it. And so I went out there, and it was, people need to see this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
because they don't unless you're there. I mean, but it just the way that each soldier just would step up there, just their toes onto the asphalt.
Yeah.
And then as their comrades that had passed on, as they're being driven past, I mean, they would salute and that, and then they would once it was passed far enough, then they would head back to their barracks.
Yep.
To that. So it was
a
very solemn occasion to watch. Yeah, no, that's really big words. Like most Americans that have never been to Washington D.C., they don't go and see the greatest, what's supposed to represent our country. Americans don't see that. They don't. They should go and see like Arlington Cemetery. They should watch the changing of the guard, because those are, or go over to the different monuments of Vietnam and other wars, where when you, with one stroke of a hand, as your hand goes across this chunk of marble there, that your hand just ran over across probably several thousand names that they're poof. They gave their life for you to be stupid, you know,
Yeah,
and that's just
100%.
that's the part that pisses me off all the time here, because it's I'm big about education. I want to come back for one thing. My question was for you is that a lot of other foreign countries, upon high school graduation, you now go into the military
Right.
for probably a minimum, I think, of 2 years. And I really think that the United States should do the exact same thing. That we have lost so much
I don't disagree with you.
integrity. We've lost so much. I hate to say, we've lost backbone and balls, is
Sure.
what we've lost.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.